this morning. They're kind of a little bit under the weather, so they're staying home and watching us online. So hello, Leo and Marie.
He also has the flu.
Yeah, they also had the flu, so hope y'all feel better.
And the worst part is he's a year older today.
That's right. So we're about to start. We just got done with the poetry section of the Old Testament, and we're about to get into the final part of the Old Testament section-wise, and that is the book of prophets or prophecies. So we've gone through, if you remember at the beginning of this class, we talked about how the Old Testament was broken up into the law and history and poetry, which we just did, and now we're getting into the major prophets and minor prophets. And as we mentioned before, the Bible, the Old Testament is not broken up chronologically. It's broken up by these categories. So a lot of times we'll have a lot of intermingling of time and event and people and things like that. So just keep that in mind, because we're kind of bouncing back and forth a little bit. Isaiah was before the exiles, and Ezekiel and Daniel were part of the exiles when Babylon took over. Major and minor prophets, we've gone over this before, but what determines major versus minor? Some are more important than others. Is that the way it works? What's a major prophet? Why do we separate it up, major prophets and minor prophets?
Length of the book.
Length of the book, would you say? Length of the book? Right. So you have the major prophets, so Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel, and Daniel are larger books, larger scrolls. And the minor prophets, they're actually called the 12, and they're all on the same scroll in the Hebrew Bible. So Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi are all grouped together. So all in total we have 17. We have 5 major and 12 minor prophets. And all are named by their author, except for which one? Lamentations. And who wrote Lamentations?
Jeremiah.
Jeremiah wrote Lamentations. And Lamentations is about the deep lament or sorrow that when the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. And he was a
Question.
eyewitness.
So would the Jews see the minor prophets as one book?
They would. That's how in the original Hebrew Bible, it is one scroll, and they call it the 12, and it's all on one book per se. They recognize that there's different prophets, but they consider that one book. And there's several non-writing prophets in the Bible that we read about. Right? There's a lot of them. There's a lot, and we'll just look at a few of them. Nathan, who we talked about, was with David, right? He was a prophet to David. He's the one that told him, hey, you messed up with Bathsheba, and we know about it. And it was an eye-opener, but we see him before the Bathsheba incident and after the Bathsheba incident. And we see that he's kind of around David a lot. And they were probably really close friends. We also have Elijah. We don't have a book on him or from him. Elisha, Samuel, among lots of others. So there's a lot of non-writing prophets as well. Hebrews chapter 1, verses 1 and 2. Verse 1 says, God spoke to our fathers by the prophets. And in verse 2 it says, in these last days he has spoken to us by his Son, and that is Jesus Christ. Who recognizes that scene right there? Anybody?
Dead Sea Scrolls probably, but
Who recognizes that word, Qumran? You do.
Where they found the Dead Sea.
That's right, Dead Sea Scrolls. So, up there at the top, the northwest area of the Dead Sea, it's about 6 miles south of Jericho and about 13 miles east of Jerusalem. In 1947, there's a shepherd boy in the area, about 16 years old, who lost a sheep or a goat. And he went out looking for him. He ends up throwing this rock into this cave and this hole in the little mountain area right there. But he heard pottery break. That sounds weird. So he goes in there and kind of checks it out. And he discovers, and he gets his cousin involved, but he discovers, this is just a sample of maybe what he would have seen, but he discovers some scroll pottery. It's how they kept the scrolls, and they kept them protected. And what they found was scrolls of what we know, our Bible, right? Things that we're talking about. This is 1947. I don't think they realized what they had at the time. They took it, local antique dealer, that kind of thing. Hey, where'd you get this? They authenticated it. A couple of years go by, about a year and a half, 2 years go by. So 1949, they start really checking things out. And there's actually 2 different locations in Qumran, caves 1, 2, and 3, and 11, and we'll talk about that in a minute, was the first little area, but about a mile south of there, there's actually hundreds of caves, but they found scrolls or fragments of scrolls of the Old Testament, but also non-biblical writings in these caves. And this is what is considered the Dead Sea Scrolls. What's that?
Well, back up.
Yep.
I was just noticing something, and I've never noticed this before, and it may be nothing. But I'm looking at your numbers there,
Yep.
or those numbers.
Right.
Looks like 11 caves with scrolls in it.
Yep.
But one, because there's an in and out, is 4A and 4B.
A and B, right, yeah.
Well, if you count those as 2,
There's 1, right. And I don't know, yeah,
you got 12.
that's right. Yeah, that's right. So,
I don't know what that means. Probably nothing. It just caught my eye.
Right.
I laughed.
well, we'll get to the number 12 in a minute too.
Okay.
The Dead Sea Scrolls, I actually took these pictures here, these 2 pictures here. There's a museum of the Bible up in Washington D.C. It's not part of the Smithsonian's
That would be
museums
politically
because it's a
correct.
privately owned deal, but it's right there amongst all of them, right? And you go through, and I remember when Leo did the class on how we got the Bible, and from the beginning all the way, what kind of writing they did, what kind of and how it was preserved through the years. We had been, I think it was 2018, me and Jennifer and the kids went up to DC, and we went to the Museum of the Bible. And so anyways, a couple of the pictures that I'm going to show is from that. Some of them I pulled from the internet. But out of the 11 caves that were explored and dug up and all this stuff, scholars estimate that there are between 15,000 and 25,000 fragments that they've collected, and you can see on this one, they have to piece them together, a lot of them. Sometimes they have bigger pieces, sometimes really small pieces, and they're trying to figure it out like a puzzle and trying to put it all together of what they have. And out of all the ones that they've got either full or at least portions of every single book in the Old Testament with the exception of Esther, and we'll get to that maybe in another lesson. But every single book that we have, they've got parts or fragments or a whole scroll of what we see today. So these are some of the ones that I saw there. I mean, you can see kind of how big the fragments are, but you can look at the legibility of the letters and the words. We've got some from parts of Isaiah. We've got some parts of all the different kinds. There's another location down south called Masada. And Masada, they found some more scrolls, fragments down there. It was from 1963 to 1965, but they weren't in caves. They were in city walls. Remember we talked about before how they would put things in there almost like a time capsule or a hiding place or whatever. But these that they found in Masada were not near as good of quality and preserved as the ones in Qumran. Why were the ones in Qumran in such good shape, do you think?
Because the air was dry,
The air was dry,
not the elements.
they were sealed in the pottery vases, right?
God.
In a cave. God, and we'll get to that too in a minute.
Wasn't Masada like under siege for a while, and so they may not have had time to preserve them intentionally. They just stuck them in.
That's right.
Well, hopefully this will work.
It is believed that the group in Qumran fled Qumran during the Roman takeover, and they either hid these in Qumran because they couldn't take them all with them, or whatever the case is, or they just left and that was their library anyways, whatever the case is, and they moved down to Masada. And then they continued to scribe and write because the Masada writings are a little bit newer, a little bit younger than the older Qumran writings. So they believe that the time frame matches up with the Dead Sea Scrolls up in Qumran, the same group of people that moved, probably fled that area when the Romans took over, and they continued their writing and their diligence. And I want to get to. I'll probably do another lesson, and I might even do a sermon whenever Greg's out about that group of people up there that really was diligent in writing and scribing all of
So would
all
they
of these,
have
or
fled-
collecting.
Would they have fled Qumran about the time of Jerusalem being destroyed?
That's right. Yep.
Okay.
Exactly. Yep. That's what the scholars believe is during that time frame, which was 63. Let me see, 63 Roman siege, 66 to 70, or 66 BC to 70 AD, somewhere in that range, and where they moved down. So it was somewhere around 63 to 68 AD. So let's go to the cave number 12. So here we are. We talked about 1947. It was the first cave that was found. Then they went back from 1949 to 1956 to explore more up in Qumran. And then later we see Masada. They found some more in 63 to 65. 2017, they find another cave, cave number 12. They don't find any scrolls, but they do find scroll jars, textiles, which is fabrics or linens and things like that. They might have used scroll wrappings, a leather strap, and get this, pickaxes that date to about 1950s. So they're pretty sure that the place got looted is what happened to the scrolls. They're pretty sure. But ever since then, so you're talking about 75 years worth from 47, 49, somewhere around that range. Archaeologists still to this day are still going through the fragmented pieces, trying to piece this thing together. Throughout this time, they've been able to utilize our newer technology that we have now. They're even using some AI, they're using some x-ray machines, they're using different, trying to preserve it, trying to handle it correctly. I saw a picture from the 50s where they were kind of over it, like these two guys are looking at them. There was a guy like piecing it all together on a huge table, smoking a cigarette right on top of it. You know, back then they didn't know any better. You know, if you go to Washington D.C. and go to some of the where the Declaration of Independence is stored, they won't allow flash photography because too many people taking a picture of it will damage the material. They don't allow they have it in a vault that comes out for, you walk into the room and it's dark and it like illuminates really, really softly, but you can kind of see it, and then whenever you go out of the room it shuts everything down. So they're trying to preserve it with airtight containers and things like that. So we've learned things along the way. Back in the 50s they didn't realize that. They were sitting there smoking a cigarette right over playing puzzle with it.
Kevin, I'm sorry, where was
Yes,
that
sir.
cave 12 at? Was that Qumran?
Qumran also, yep. That was the 12th cave up in Qumran, yep. So, why do I bring all this up? Number one, it's the preserving of the Word, just like Leo had talked to us about a year or two ago when he did his class on this. What is, in your opinion, we've got a lot of messianic prophecies in the Old Testament. What's the main book that's known for messianic prophecies? I mean, detail-wise and things like that. Isaiah. Out of all of these things that has been found, the great Isaiah scroll is probably the most well-known, let's say, and the whole scroll, all 66 chapters of Isaiah, was found almost perfect condition. There's a little bit of deterioration in it that you can see, but you can read. And why is that important? Yes, ma'am.
Because it shows that, I'm not sure, I don't remember you saying this, but these scrolls date, they're like the oldest ones that have been found.
Right.
And the Isaiah scroll is the exact same as one from later, and the same as we have in the Bible, and that just shows you how it's been preserved.
That's right. So, what year did Isaiah live? Anybody remember?
Roughly 700
Right.
BC.
Right, 700 BC, so 700 years before Christ, right? Before the Dead Sea Scrolls, what was our oldest manuscripts that we had in our possession that we knew about?
About 1000 AD.
About 1000 AD, right? So along the way, there were skeptics that were saying, well, things have been changed. This isn't the same, people have changed it throughout time to fit whatever narrative or whatever that you wanted to. So there's a lot of skeptics. And then we get this. This added another 1,000 years. This is 2,000-year-old scroll right here. 2,000 years old.
700 years old.
Do what? Yeah, close to it, somewhere in that range. But like Tracy said, we have our current Bible, and we had what we thought was the oldest 1,000 years ago. Well, they match up pretty good, but the question was that part right there. How many times have been changed before we get to that? Because we can compare those two. Now we have another 1,000 years worth of comparison, and it matches, and it matches, and it matches. That's huge. That's huge.
Now, are you gonna mention that it's older, that great Isaiah scroll dates back, just like it says up there,
Yes.
BC?
So this is 125 BC is what this one is believed to be, somewhere in that range. Is that what you were
Are
saying?
you gonna get to why that's super important?
125? I might, go ahead. I might not.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, so just like you were saying, since our oldest copy of, we'll just say, to make the biggest point, Isaiah 53, our oldest copy was 1,000 years after the birth of the Christ.
Right.
So, if that was written, obviously it was written 1,000 years after the birth of Christ, but if it wasn't a copy of something written before Christ, you could look at the Gospels and say, okay, I'm going to pretend to write a prophecy, messianic prophecy about this Jesus of Nazareth.
Right.
I'm going to put it in Isaiah 53. And it's so easy to do because I have the information about just Jesus of Nazareth. So I'm going to say he's going to come along and he's going to be a suffering servant. He's going to die and rise again. I'm going to put that in here. Who's going to know?
Right.
Well, nobody challenged that because there was a tremendous majority of human beings that had the fear of God and the fear of God's Word. It was a very reverent thing to have a Bible. 1700s, 1800s come along, late 1800s, people start to get skeptical.
Mm-hmm.
And you might think, well, they've got an argument because we really don't have anything that proves that this was an actual prophecy
Right.
before Christ, 700 years to be in fact, but we didn't have a copy that was before Christ until the 1900s when some boy threw a rock into a cave.
Right.
How many years have we had boys goofing around with rocks?
Right.
And that just happened to happen in an era of time where you might have a legitimate argument about can we trust these scriptures?
Right.
With all the different, we got so smart with this and smart with that, and we thinking, well, maybe we shouldn't trust the scriptures.
Right.
And then that's when, just so happens, and I am convinced the providence of God, that we found all these, including the great Isaiah scroll, which dates prior to the birth of Jesus, predicting, or better said, prophesying what his life would be like.
That's right.
So it's significant that it not only is it, wow, that's 1,000 more years older and it matched, great, but even more to me is that to the 200s BC, this is what the Messiah is going to do.
Right. Yeah, and one thing I want to add to that is the Jewish people, when they had the book of Isaiah, the scroll of Isaiah, sometimes you might hear that chapter 53 of Isaiah is called, quote unquote, the forbidden chapter, and it's kind of a not a rumor, but it's false. It is in the original Hebrew text, and they do study it. But it's called that because there's some controversy over chapter 53. Early Jewish people would believe that that could be a prophecy about a Messiah. But after Jesus came and Christianity was on the rise, well, what is the Jewish mindset? That wasn't the Christ. But they're putting, it's hard to say that wasn't the Christ when it talks about piercing the feet, piercing the hands, and all the things that he went through. So around the Middle Ages, it was a French rabbi that was a commentator that kind of started looking at this and saying, no, instead of this being a prophecy about a Messiah, it's going to be a history of Israel's sufferings that they went through. So he kind of changed the way Jewish people viewed chapter 53, because I don't think they could get around the fact that that was Jesus Christ, period. I mean, that is such a, so it's not that the fact that they avoided that chapter, but they had a hard time explaining chapter 53, not pointing to Jesus Christ. And so there was a very, so for 1,500 years, they were looking at, or 1,200 years, 1,500 years, whatever it is, they were looking at that being about the Messiah, but there was a big problem with them trying to be able to justify what that meant and Jesus. And at that time, Isaiah, I'm sure, didn't know what he was writing about. You know, it's just like David with Psalm 22. You know, he might have been talking about something that was, you know, he's inspired by God. God's working through him. And he didn't probably get the suffering servant to the full extent. But as we read it, there's no denying that Jesus checked all the boxes, you know. Anyway, this well-preserved scroll of Isaiah is huge for, you know, just like everything that Greg just mentioned. The scroll, which I'm going to show you a quick video here in a minute, but the scroll itself was about, this is about 9.5 inches or so, whatever. So it's about 10 to 10.5 inches, so it's about a little bit more than the height of this Bible here. But this is how long the scroll was. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. I guess I need to start going on. 24 feet. That's how long the scroll was. Right there. Rolled up into pottery, preserved for 1,000 years. Or 2,000 years. 1,000 years. 2,000 years. Preserved for 2,000 years in a cave. And it just so happens, between all the skeptics and all of that, here you go. What are the chances a boy leaves his flock to find the one?
Right?
Sounds
In
familiar.
1947, throws a rock in there, here's pottery, pulls this thing out, and boom, we have a 2,000-year-old scroll of Isaiah that just so happens to match the 1,000-year-old that we had, plus our Bibles today. The skeptics had to be hushed up. I mean, what are they going to say? What was it written on? Parchment, animal skin. Yep,
I'm thinking about it being rolled up
yep,
for that long.
yep.
That had to be the hardest part about,
Taking it apart
taking it apart and because, you know, when,
Yep.
when animal skin dries out.
dries out. Yep.
It's brittle.
But again, God, driest, very extremely dry climate, in a cave, dark, you know, nobody messing with it, sealed in a scroll vase,
Okay.
and preserved for 2,000 years.
When you started describing this, the shepherd boy reminded me of the story that Jesus told. Leaving the 99 and go find the
Right,
one.
that's why I brought that up, yeah.
It's just like, wow.
Yeah. But yeah, it was made of 17 sheets of parchment paper, or parchment. And, you know, you can't really read anything there, but, you know, up close, I mean, look at the,
Wow.
you can still see everything, you know?
How big was the container that it was in?
I don't know that, I'm not sure. The original of this is kept similar to what we do with our Declaration of Independence. Is located at the Israel Museum in Israel, housed in its shrine of the book. Due to extreme fragility, it is kept in a sealed, temperature-controlled underground vault and is only displayed on rare occasions. A high-quality facsimile or copy High quality copy is often on view at the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. And this is what we saw when we were up at the museum. I took this video. I kind of went a little bit fast, but this is the copy of it that was on display. And you can see what kind of really good shape that it's in. You can see how long it is. You know, me and Steve put out the tape measure, 24 feet long. They've got it in a room. And when you're not in there, the lights go off to even preserve that, you know. But you can see the clarity of that. It's just
That's
unbelievable.
facsimile,
That's correct.
and that's on regular paper, what kind of, or,
I'm not sure about, let me see if it says. Yeah, this one doesn't say. I'm sure it's not animal skin, but it's, you know, they tried to make it look exactly alike, you know, and even aged it. But that's what it looks like.
now you said some of these books would be on 2 scrolls because they were so big. Would Isaiah been one of those books that would be on 2 scrolls?
This one was all on one scroll.
1 scroll.
Yeah, and I had another video, but it didn't come out too good. I had a video of Juliana taking a scroll and how they used to read it. You know, they didn't do this. They didn't. You know, they had like this little section right here in the middle, and what you would do is kind of roll both of them right here and kind of turn it up as you were reading. You turn it and turn it and turn it. And Juliana did that at one of the little, you know, test areas, you know, and kind of how they did it. And then they had another room, kind of like a library, on different methods of how they would store these. You know, some of them looked like they were rolled up almost like a drafting. I don't know if y'all have ever done building plans or anything like that. You roll those up, you kind of stick them in these tubes or whatever. And they also had like the pottery and that they would put them in. They had different type things that they would show how they would keep their scrolls like in a library. Let's turn to Isaiah 53 real quick. Isaiah 52 actually. And I want to bring something up about the exalted servant and the suffering servant. So in Isaiah chapter 52, starting in verse 13, it says, "The exalted servant" is the title that I have in my Bible here. "Behold, my servant will prosper. He will be high and lifted up and greatly exalted. Just as many were astonished at you, my people, so his appearance was marred more than any man, his form more than the sons of men. Thus he will sprinkle many nations. Kings will shut their mouths on account of him. For what had not been told them they will see, and what they had not heard they will understand." All right, before we get into the suffering servant, one of the problems that I see with this rabbi that changed the Jewish belief about this being Israel instead of the Messiah is just the pronouns. Normally,
She.
Israel, Zion, is referred to as she in the Bible. Daughters of Zion, the bride, the harlot, mother. We do the same thing in our culture. Look at our boats. Look at our trucks. Right? It comes from a nautical term from the Latin that they're referred to as she's. You know, we name our boats Lady Whatever, or how's she doing?
Used to be hurricanes were all.
That's right. Hurricanes used to be all women, right?
Hurricanes and hurricanes.
Even our country, God Bless America, the song, right? Stand beside her and guide her. We talk about Mother Earth. We talk about Mother Ocean. We talk about Mother Nature. We do the same thing. And even in the book of Isaiah, in other places, you'll see where it talks about Israel being a herd. Why the him here? So there's a problem with his with the thought process in it, and the problem is they couldn't get around this not being the Christ. So it's a very all right. So let's read chapter 53.
Kevin, you know that, my version is a little different, but it talks about his appearance was so marred beyond human semblance.
Yep.
And in my footnote, it says that it was shockingly inhuman mass of wounded flesh.
Yep.
I
Yep.
hadn't read that before.
Yep. And if yeah, it's just hard to get around. It's hard. It's impossible to get around. So their only way of getting around it is, well, we're gonna.
Twisted.
It's not about the Messiah anymore. We got to change it because it's Christianity thing. They're looking at this, and this spells it out to a T. I mean, the suffering servant. Who has believed our message, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? For he grew up before him like a tender shoot, like a root out of parched ground. He has no stately form or majesty that we should look upon him, nor appearance that we should be attracted to him. He was despised and forsaken of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief, and like one from whom men hide their face. He was despised, and we did not esteem him. Surely our griefs he himself bore, and our sorrows he carried. Yet we ourselves esteemed him stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted. But he was pierced through for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The chastening for our well-being fell upon him, and by his scourging we are healed. All of us, like sheep, have gone astray. Each of us has turned to his own way, but the Lord has caused the iniquity of us all to fall on him. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he did not open up his mouth. Like a lamb that is led to the slaughter, like a sheep that is silent before its shearers, so he did not open his mouth. By oppression and judgment he was taken away. And as for his generation, who considered that he was cut off out of the land of the living, for the transgression of my people, to whom the stroke was due. His grave was assigned with wicked men, yet he was with a rich man in his death, because he had done no violence, nor was there any deceit in his mouth. But the Lord was pleased to crush him, putting him to grief. If he would render himself as a guilt offering, he will see his offspring, he will prolong his days, and the good pleasure of the Lord will prosper in his hand. As a result of the anguish of his soul, he will see it and be satisfied. By his knowledge, the righteous one, my servant, will justify the many, as he will bear their iniquities. Therefore I will allot him a portion with great, and he will divide the booty with the strong, because he poured out himself to death and was numbered with the transgressors. Yet he himself bore the sin of many and interceded for the transgressors. There's so many.
When has Israel,
Right,
on their best day, borne the sins of the rest of the world?
that's right.
That's what I was gonna ask.
Yep,
Never.
never. There's so many things in here that, and the way that they would look at this, the Jewish people, and they still from 1100, from the mid-century, since this, I can't remember his name, Rashi, I think that's a title, but this rabbi in France who kind of changed this way of thinking because of this rise of Christianity. Most of the Jews hold the same viewpoint today, that that's not talking about Messiah. But they did for 1,500 years. They were reading this, looking towards Messiah. But they just couldn't. They could not believe that was Jesus Christ that fulfilled those. They're still looking for a prophet, a priest, and a king here on earth. They were expecting somebody totally different, even though Christ is prophet, priest, and king. That's not what in their head, that's not what they were looking for. But yeah, there's so many things in this passage that, so if you hear it called the forbidden chapter, it's not really a forbidden chapter. It's a rumor, a myth, whatever you want to call it. But it is a very controversial chapter because the Jewish can't get around. It's so blatant that that's Jesus Christ that there has been so many controversies over this throughout the years. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
One thing to consider is also that chapter 52 wouldn't be divided on the scrolls into chapter 53.
Right, that's correct.
It would be a
It would just,
continuous
that's
thought.
correct. Yeah, and as you can see from this, there are no chapters and verses.
Right.
That came later. Trying to break it up and make it more readable and stuff like that. But back, and Greg's brought that up before too with Ethiopian eunuch, reading what he was reading in Isaiah 53 and bled over to 54 and then gets into baptism and all of that. So.
By the way, I would have done the same thing teaching this class, but it has to be said, it's not just Isaiah 53.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
The whole book
Oh, yeah.
is just invaluable. You
Yeah,
can't even
that's
put a
right.
price on it for the faith of the Christian.
That's right. And we've got a chart in the book there that cites a few of them, but look at turn with me to chapter 9, verse 6. But yeah, like Greg just said, it's all over the place. But chapter 9, verse 6, it talks about his coming. Chapter 7, verse 14 talks about the virgin birth. Chapter 61, verse 1, it talks about the proclamation of good news that he would bring. Chapter 60, verses 2 through 3 talks about his return to claim his own. And with all of this, whether it be Jeremiah or Daniel or whatever, there's prophecies about the Messiah, and they're blatant. They're and us finding, humans being able to find these 2,000-year-old scrolls and fragments of scrolls, they're able to piece the things together to show that what we have today is the same thing they had 2,000 years ago. I'm talking about 95% of, Isaiah, you can tell just on this picture right here, there's just a tiny little piece right there that you can't, but you can make out, you take out, you write a word or a sentence and you take out a little bit, you can still make out what it's supposed to be. So there's not much missing out of this book of Isaiah. And for this book to be the one that has been preserved over all this time with as many prophecies of Jesus that are in this book is just, like Randall said, it's a God thing. There's no other explanation. From the get-go, I'm talking about them writing it, whether it be the people that lived in Qumran, or that they collected it. When they left, they preserved it. The temperature, where it got stored, all the preservation steps that had to happen for us to be able to get what we have today is a God thing. Does anybody have any comments or questions that you have that I can? Nothing? All right, I appreciate your comments and attention this morning.